Hello, ma'am. Allison, right?
Hi, how are you?
I'm Detective Nicholas. We're detectives from Orlando.
Okay, how may I help you?
I have a search warrant to take your DNA.
My DNA?
Nobody who knew Sarah Martinez ever imagined she wouldn't make it home that October evening. Sarah was the kind of person who always texted back, always showed up on time, always let her mom know where she was going. She had moved to the quiet suburban neighborhood just 6 months earlier, taking a job at the local elementary school as a teaching assistant. The kids loved her. The other teachers loved her. Everyone said Sarah had this warm, genuine smile that could light up a room. That's how she met Emily Carter. Emily's daughter was in one of the classrooms where Sarah worked, and at first the two women seemed to hit it off. Emily invited Sarah over for coffee. They chatted in the school parking lot after pickup. Sarah, who was new to town and didn't know many people yet, seemed grateful for the friendship. She told her sister on the phone that Emily was really nice, just a little intense sometimes. The last person to see Sarah alive was Marcus Chen, who lived in the apartment next to Emily's townhouse. It was October 18th, around 7:30 in the evening. Marcus had just gotten home from his shift at the hospital when he heard voices coming from Emily's driveway. At first, he didn't think much of it, but then the voices got louder. "I trusted you with that." Sarah's voice carried across the narrow space between the buildings. She sounded hurt more than angry. "How could you do this to me?" Marcus paused at his front door, his key halfway in the lock. He couldn't help but listen. "You're being dramatic," Emily shot back. Her voice had that sharp edge Marcus had heard before when Emily argued with the mailman or yelled at neighborhood kids who rode their bikes too close to her car. "I was going to pay you back. You're making this into a bigger deal than it is." $800 isn't dramatic, Emily. That's my rent money." "Well, maybe if you managed your money better. I managed it fine until I loaned it to you." Sarah's voice cracked a little. "You said it was an emergency. You promised you'd pay me back in 2 weeks. That was a month ago." Marcus felt uncomfortable eavesdropping, but something about the conversation made him stay frozen in place. There was a desperation in Sarah's voice that worried him. "You know what your problem is?" Emily's tone turned cold and mean. "You think being nice makes people respect you, but it just makes you weak. A pushover." "I just want my money back," Sarah said quietly. "Then you'll get it when I have it. Now get off my property before I call the cops and tell them you're harassing me." Marcus heard footsteps on the driveway gravel. He quickly slipped inside his apartment, but he moved to the window and carefully peeked through the blinds. He saw Sarah walking toward her car, parked at the curb. She was wiping her eyes. Emily stood in the doorway of her townhouse, arms crossed, watching Sarah with an expression Marcus would later describe to police as pure hatred. Sarah got in her car, sat there for a moment with her head down, then drove away. Emily went back inside and slammed the door so hard Marcus heard it from his apartment. That was 7:47 p.m. on October 18th. Marcus remembered because he checked his phone right after, thinking maybe he should text Sarah and make sure she was okay. They weren't close friends, just neighbors who said hi in passing, but he had her number from the building group chat. He never sent that text, and Sarah Martinez was never seen again. By the next morning, Sarah's mother had called the school, asking why her daughter hadn't shown up for work and wasn't answering her phone. By that afternoon, Sarah's sister had called the police. And by that evening, Detective Mark Reynolds was standing in Emily Carter's driveway, asking questions that Emily answered with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. When Detective Mark Reynolds knocked on Emily Carter's door that first time, she answered wearing yoga pants and a cardigan, a glass of white wine in her hand. It was 6:30 in the evening, and she looked completely relaxed, not like someone whose friend had just vanished without a trace. "Can I help you?" Emily asked, leaning against the doorframe. Her tone suggested she was mildly bothered by the interruption, like he was a salesman trying to sell her something she didn't want. "I'm Detective Reynolds with the county police. I'm looking into the disappearance of Sarah Martinez. I understand you know her?" Emily's expression didn't change much. She took a sip of her wine and nodded. "Yeah, Sarah. She works at my daughter's school." "Why?" What happened? Her family reported her missing. They say she hasn't been home since yesterday, hasn't answered any calls or texts. When's the last time you saw her? Emily tilted her head like she was trying to remember something that happened weeks ago instead of just the night before. Oh, let me think. Yesterday? Yeah, she stopped by here yesterday evening. Around 7, maybe? We had coffee a few times, so she dropped by sometimes. What did you two talk about? Nothing really, Emily shrugged. Just normal stuff, how her day went, how my daughter was doing in school, that kind of thing. Detective Reynolds pulled out his notebook. And what time did she leave? Maybe 8? 8:15? I'm not sure exactly. I didn't really pay attention to the time. Emily took another sip of wine, completely casual. She just left. Did she say where she was going? Home, I guess. I didn't ask. Emily shifted her weight, and for the first time, a flicker of annoyance crossed her face. Is there a reason you're asking me all these questions? I barely know the girl. Detective Reynolds kept his voice neutral and professional. Her car was found abandoned near the highway this morning. Her purse was still inside, along with her phone. Her family is very worried. That's weird, Emily said, but her tone didn't sound worried at all. It sounded like she was commenting on the weather. Maybe she went for a walk or something? People do that. At night? Leaving her phone and purse behind? Emily's eyes narrowed slightly. I don't know what to tell you, detective. She was here, we talked, she left. That's all I know. Before Detective Reynolds could ask another question, a car pulled up to the curb. Sarah's sister, Maria Martinez, got out and rushed toward them. Her eyes were red from crying. You're Emily? Maria demanded, her voice shaking. You saw my sister yesterday? Emily straightened up, her casual attitude disappearing. Excuse me, who are you? I'm Sarah's sister. Where is she? What happened to her? I already told the detective. She came over, we had coffee, she left. I don't know anything else. Emily's voice had an edge now, defensive and irritated. That's not what the neighbor said. Maria's hands were clenched into fists. He heard you two fighting. He heard Sarah crying. Emily's face flushed red. We weren't fighting. We had a small disagreement, that's it. Sarah got emotional over nothing, like she always does. Then she left. End of story. The disagreement about what? Detective Reynolds asked quietly. Emily's jaw tightened. That's personal. Between friends. It had nothing to do with whatever happened to her after she left my house. She loaned you money, Maria shouted. $800, and you wouldn't pay her back. I was going to pay her back, Emily snapped. She was being impatient and dramatic about it. That's why we argued. But then she got in her car and drove away. Whatever happened after that has nothing to do with me. Detective Reynolds couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong with Emily Carter's story. He'd been a detective for 12 years, and he'd learned to trust his instincts. The way Emily acted, so casual, so unconcerned about a missing friend, didn't sit right with him. The next morning, he got a call from Maria Martinez. She sounded panicked. Detective, Sarah's phone just went completely dead. It was still showing a location until about an hour ago, and now it's just gone. Like someone turned it off or destroyed it. Reynolds sat up straighter at his desk. Where was the last location? Near Emily's neighborhood. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Sarah never left that area. And there's something else. Maria's voice cracked. I went to Sarah's apartment this morning with the landlord. Her work bag isn't there. Her favorite jacket isn't there. The shoes she always wears, they're gone too. She was wearing them when she left for school that day. You think she had those things with her when she went to Emily's house? I know she did. Sarah always brought her work bag everywhere because she kept her laptop in it. And that jacket? She wore it every single day. It's not in her car, it's not in her apartment. So where is it? Detective Reynolds was already grabbing his keys. I'm heading to Emily's house right now. Don't go there yourself, okay? Let me handle this. 20 minutes later, he was back at Emily's front door. This time when she answered, she looked less put together. Her hair was messy, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept. You again? Emily said, not bothering to hide her annoyance. I already told you everything I know. I have a few follow-up questions. May I come in? Emily hesitated, then stepped aside. Fine, but make it quick. I have things to do. The townhouse was spotless, almost too spotless. Reynolds noticed the strong smell of cleaning products, bleach and something citrusy. The floors looked freshly mopped and every surface gleamed. Spring cleaning? Reynolds asked casually. I like to keep a clean house. Emily crossed her arms. What do you want? Sarah's sister says some of Sarah's belongings are missing. Her work bag, her jacket, her everyday shoes. Did she have those items with her when she came here? Emily's expression didn't change, but Reynolds saw her fingers grip her arms a little tighter. I don't remember what she was wearing. I wasn't paying that much attention. You don't remember if she was carrying a bag? No. That's strange. Most people would notice if someone came over carrying a work bag. Emily's eyes flashed with anger. Are you calling me a liar? I'm saying it's unusual that you can't remember basic details about someone you saw less than 48 hours ago. Well, I can't. Maybe I'm not as observant as you think I should be. Emily walked toward the door, a clear signal that she wanted him to leave. If that's all, Detective, I really need to get back to my day. One more thing. Reynolds stayed where he was. Would you mind if I looked around? Just to rule things out? Do you have a warrant? No, but then no, you can't look around. This is my private home, and I don't appreciate being treated like a criminal just because I was the last person to see Sarah. Emily opened the front door wide. If you want to search my house, come back with a warrant. Otherwise, leave me alone. Detective Reynolds walked out, but he stopped on the driveway and turned back. You know, what's interesting, Miss Carter? Sarah's phone last pinged near this neighborhood before it died. Any idea why that might be? Emily's face went pale for just a second, then her expression hardened. No. Now get off my property. She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. Detective Reynolds knew that building a case meant following the evidence, even when it led to uncomfortable places. 2 days into Sarah Martinez's disappearance, he assigned Sergeant Thomas Blake to check Emily Carter's financial records. If Emily had done something to Sarah, she might have needed supplies to cover it up. And people always left a paper trail. Sergeant Blake was good at his job. He started with Emily's credit card statements and bank records, going through every transaction from the past week. Most of it was normal stuff, grocery stores, gas stations, the usual bills. But then he found something that made him pause. Reynolds, you need to see this, Blake said, walking into the detective's office with a printout. October 19th, 6:47 a.m., Home Depot. Emily spent $247.83. Reynolds looked up from his computer. The morning after Sarah disappeared. Exactly. Blake laid the receipt on the desk. And look at what she bought. Reynolds scanned the list and his jaw tightened. 2 bottles of industrial-strength bleach, 3 containers of heavy-duty cleaning solution, a large plastic tarp, 12 feet by 16 feet. 2 boxes of contractor-grade garbage bags, the thick black ones that didn't tear easily. A package of disposable gloves. A scrub brush with hard bristles. And a mop with a replaceable head. That's not spring cleaning supplies, Reynolds said quietly. That's a cleanup kit. Gets worse, Blake continued. I called the Home Depot and asked them to pull their security footage. They sent it over an hour ago. Blake opened his laptop and turned it toward Reynolds. The video showed the interior of Home Depot, early morning, barely any customers in the store. Then Emily Carter appeared on screen, pushing a large orange cart. Even on the grainy security footage, Reynolds could see how she moved. Quick, focused, not browsing like a normal shopper. She knew exactly what she needed. The camera followed her to the cleaning supplies aisle. She grabbed the bleach without hesitating, tossing 2 bottles into her cart. Then she moved to the tarps and plastic sheeting, selecting the largest size available. She barely glanced at the price tags. Watch her face, Blake said, pausing the video. Reynolds leaned closer. Emily kept looking around, checking over her shoulder. Her expression was tight, stressed. This wasn't someone casually picking up supplies for a home project. This was someone who needed these items urgently and didn't want to be noticed. The video continued. Emily went to the checkout lane, paid in cash, unusual for a purchase that large, and rushed out to her car. The timestamp showed she was in and out of the store in less than 15 minutes. She didn't want to use a credit card, Reynolds observed. She knew we might look at her purchases. But she forgot that Home Depot keeps receipts in their system by timestamp and store location, Blake said with a grim smile. Her credit card was in their rewards program. When I called and gave them her name, they pulled up her entire purchase history. Reynolds sat back in his chair, thinking. Sarah disappeared around 8 p.m. on October 18th. Emily claims she left her house alive, but less than 12 hours later, Emily's buying enough cleaning supplies to scrub down a crime scene. There's more, Blake said. I checked her other purchases. October 20th, she went to Walmart, bought more trash bags, paper towels, and 3 gallons of white vinegar, also paid cash. Vinegar neutralizes bleach smell, Reynolds said. He'd worked enough crime scenes to know the tricks people used. She's trying to cover up the chemical odors. Blake nodded. And October 21st, she rented that storage unit. My guess? Whatever she bought these supplies to clean up, she needed somewhere to hide the evidence. Reynolds stood up and grabbed his coat. We need to talk to the neighbors again. I want to know if anyone saw Emily carrying bags or tarps into her house. I want to know if anyone heard cleaning noises late at night, and I want to know if anyone saw her throwing away large amounts of trash. You think she killed Sarah in that townhouse? I think Emily Carter bought supplies to clean up something she didn't want anyone to find, Reynolds said. And I'm going to prove it. 3 days after Sarah Martinez disappeared, Detective Reynolds sat in his office staring at a computer screen that told a story Emily Carter didn't want him to know. The phone company had finally sent over the GPS data for Emily's cell phone, and what it showed made his stomach turn. Officer Jason Miller leaned over his shoulder, pointing at the map on the screen. Look at this. October 18th, 11:47 p.m. Her phone leaves her house and heads east on Route 9. Reynolds zoomed in on the route. Emily's phone had traveled for nearly 40 minutes, moving away from the suburbs and into a rural area outside of town. The GPS showed her phone stopping at a location that was nothing but woods and farmland. It stayed there for 23 minutes, then traveled back toward town, taking a different route home. What's out there? Miller asked. Reynolds pulled up a satellite view. Trees, empty fields, a few abandoned buildings. No houses, no businesses, no reason for anyone to be there at midnight on a Tuesday. Nothing, Reynolds said quietly. Absolutely nothing. Which is exactly why someone would go there. He clicked through more data. Emily's phone had made another trip 2 nights later, this time heading south. It stopped at an industrial park that was mostly empty warehouses and self-storage facilities. The phone stayed at that location for over an hour. Pull up traffic cameras and security footage for both these areas, Reynolds said. I want to know if we can spot her car. It took Officer Miller 6 hours of reviewing footage, but he found it. The first camera was at a gas station about 2 miles from the wooded area. The timestamp read 11:52 p.m. on October 18th. Emily's silver Honda CR-V pulled up to the pump, but Emily didn't get out to buy gas. She just sat in the driver's seat for a moment, looking around, like she was checking to see if anyone was watching. Then she drove away, heading in the direction of the woods. The second piece of footage was even more damning. A security camera at Storage Mart, a facility on the south side of town, showed Emily's Honda pulling through the front gate at 1:34 a.m. on October 21st. The camera tracked her car as it wound through the rows of storage units and stopped in front of Unit 247. Emily got out alone and unlocked the unit. She went inside for several minutes, then came back out carrying nothing. She locked the unit, got back in her car, and left. Reynolds immediately called Storage Mart's main office. After some back and forth with the manager, he got the information he needed. Unit 247 was rented to Emily Carter. She'd paid cash for it on October 19th, the day after Sarah disappeared. She rented a storage unit the day after? Miller said when Reynolds told him. And she never mentioned this when you talked to her? Nope. She said she'd been home all week, too upset about Sarah to go anywhere. Reynolds grabbed his jacket. Let's go pay Miss Carter another visit. I want to hear her explain this. But when they arrived at Emily's townhouse, her car wasn't in the driveway. Reynolds knocked anyway. No answer. He called her cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. She's running, Miller said. No. Reynolds shook his head. She thinks she's too smart to run. She's probably out shopping or getting her nails done, acting like everything's normal. Reynolds was right. 2 hours later, traffic cameras caught Emily's Honda at the mall parking lot. When she finally came home at 4:30 that afternoon, carrying shopping bags from 3 different stores, Reynolds and Miller were waiting in their unmarked car across the street. They watched her walk into her house, completely relaxed, without a care in the world. Like she hadn't rented a secret storage unit in the middle of the night. Like she hadn't driven to the middle of nowhere at midnight while her friend was missing. Reynolds picked up his radio. "We need that search warrant. Now." Detective Aaron Cole had been reviewing security footage for hours, his eyes burning from staring at the screen. He was going through surveillance tapes from every store within 10 miles of Emily Carter's house, looking for anything suspicious. When he finally found what he was looking for, he immediately called Detective Reynolds. "You need to get down here right now," Cole said. "I've got something from the Walmart on Henderson Road. You're not going to believe this." Reynolds arrived at the station 20 minutes later. Cole had the video queued up and ready to play. "This is from October 20th, Cole explained. 2 days after Sarah disappeared. Watch the timestamp." The video showed the Walmart parking lot nearly empty in the middle of the night. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. A silver Honda CR-V pulled into a spot near the entrance, but the driver didn't get out right away. The car just sat there for almost 3 minutes. "What's she doing?" Reynolds asked. "Just watch." Finally, the driver's side door opened and Emily Carter stepped out. Even on the black and white security footage, Reynolds could see something was wrong with her. Her hair was messy, pulled back in a ponytail that looked like it was falling apart. She wore sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, totally different from the put-together woman he'd met at her house. But it was her behavior that really caught his attention. Emily looked around the parking lot 3 times before she started walking toward the store entrance. Her shoulders were hunched, and she kept her head down like she didn't want anyone to recognize her. "She's scared," Reynolds observed. The video switched to the interior cameras. Emily grabbed a shopping cart and headed straight for the cleaning supplies aisle. No browsing, no wandering. She moved fast, like she was on a mission. Cole paused the video and zoomed in. "Look at her hands." Emily's hands were shaking as she reached for bottles of cleaning solution. She grabbed them quickly, almost frantically, and tossed them into her cart. Then she moved to the paper goods section and loaded up on paper towels, 8 rolls. After that, she grabbed 3 more boxes of heavy-duty trash bags, the same kind she'd bought at Home Depot. Why does she need more trash bags? Cole wondered out loud. She already bought 2 boxes. "Because she used up the first ones," Reynolds said grimly. "Keep playing." The footage showed Emily rushing through the store, her cart getting fuller. More cleaning gloves, bottles of spray cleaner, a gallon of white vinegar, a bottle of Febreze air freshener. Everything someone would need to clean and cover up smells. But the most disturbing part was Emily herself. The camera caught her face several times, and each time she looked more panicked. She kept glancing toward the front of the store, like she expected someone to come after her. At one point, she stopped completely and stared at another shopper, a middle-aged man just buying milk, like he might be a threat. "She's paranoid," Cole said. "Look how many times she checks behind her." Emily went through the self-checkout, scanning her items quickly with trembling hands. She pulled out a wad of cash from her pocket, again avoiding any electronic payment that could be traced. As she bagged her purchases, she dropped a bottle of cleaner. The footage showed her freeze, look around to see if anyone noticed, then quickly pick it up and shove it in a bag. The final camera angle showed Emily pushing her cart to her car at 2:43 a.m. She practically ran across the parking lot, loaded everything into her trunk in less than 2 minutes, and drove away fast enough that her tires squealed slightly on the pavement. Reynolds leaned back in his chair, processing what he'd just seen. That's not the behavior of an innocent person. That's someone who's terrified of getting caught. "The Walmart employee I talked to remembered her," Cole added, "said she looked really sketchy, and they almost called security because she was acting so weird." "Did they see what direction she went when she left?" "Yeah, straight back toward her neighborhood." Reynolds nodded slowly. "She's cleaning something big, and she's running out of supplies to do it." Detective Reynolds had interviewed hundreds of suspects over his career, and he knew one thing for certain. Liars couldn't keep their stories straight. Every time he talked to Emily Carter, her version of events changed just a little bit, and every time he pointed it out, she got angrier. The first interview, on October 19th, Emily had been casual and dismissive. Sarah came over, we talked. She left around 8. I don't know where she went after that. When Reynolds asked how Sarah left, Emily barely hesitated. She drove. Her car was parked on the street. But Sarah's car had been found abandoned near the highway with her purse and phone inside. So on October 21st, when Reynolds came back with more questions, he brought up that detail. You told me Sarah drove away from your house, Reynolds said, sitting across from Emily at her kitchen table. But her car was found miles away. How did she get there if she left your house in her car? Emily's eyes narrowed. I didn't say she drove. I said she left. Maybe she took an Uber or something. Reynolds kept his voice calm. Actually, you specifically said she drove. I wrote it down in my notes. Well, I was mistaken. Emily crossed her arms. It was dark. Maybe I just assumed she drove. I didn't actually watch her leave. You didn't watch your friend leave your house at 8 at night? I'm not her babysitter, detective. She's a grown woman. Reynolds made a note. So she took an Uber? I don't know, probably, or maybe a friend picked her up. What friend? How would I know? I don't keep track of her social life. 2 days later, when Officer Jason Miller stopped by to ask follow-up questions, Emily's story changed again. This time she seemed irritated from the moment she opened the door. Miss Carter, we're trying to establish Sarah's last known movements, Miller said politely. You mentioned she might have been picked up by a friend? I never said that, Emily snapped. Miller checked his notes. Detective Reynolds wrote that you said. I don't care what he wrote. I said maybe she took an Uber. That's it. But in your first interview, you said she drove away in her car. Emily's face flushed red. Are you calling me a liar? No, ma'am. I'm just trying to understand. I've told you people everything I know. Sarah came over, we had coffee, we talked, and then she left. I didn't follow her out the door to see exactly how she got home because it wasn't my business. Did you see her walk to her car? Emily hesitated, and Miller could practically see her mind working, trying to remember what she'd said before. I think so. Yes, she walked to her car. But you just said you didn't watch her leave. I saw her walk toward the street. I didn't stand there and watch her drive away. Is that a crime? Miller stayed professional. No, ma'am. We're just trying to get clear information. By the fourth interview on October 25th, Emily's patience had completely run out. When Detective Reynolds and Sergeant Blake showed up at her door, she didn't even let them inside. What now? She demanded, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. We need to clarify a few things about the night Sarah disappeared, Reynolds said. I've told you everything 5 times already. Your story keeps changing, Miss Carter. First, Sarah drove away. Then she took an Uber. Then a friend picked her up. Then she drove again. Which is it? Emily's voice rose to a shout. I don't remember every single detail. It was weeks ago. Why are you harassing me instead of out looking for Sarah? We are looking for Sarah, Blake said calmly. That's why we need accurate information. My information is accurate. Sarah left my house alive. Whatever happened to her after that has nothing to do with me. Emily's finger jabbed toward them with each word. I'm done answering questions. If you want to talk to me again, you can talk to my lawyer. She slammed the door so hard the porch light rattled. Reynolds and Blake walked back to their car in silence. Once they were inside, Blake spoke first. She's falling apart. Good, Reynolds said, starting the engine. People make mistakes when they're falling apart, and Emily Carter is about to make a big one. Emily Carter wasn't the type of person who took criticism quietly. She'd spent her whole life demanding to speak to managers, filing complaints when things didn't go her way, and making sure everyone knew when she felt wronged. So when the police kept showing up at her door asking questions, she decided to fight back the only way she knew how, by making their lives as difficult as possible. It started with a phone call to the police station on October 26th. The desk sergeant barely got out. How can I help you? Before Emily launched into her complaint. I need to speak to whoever is in charge of Detective Reynolds, she said, her voice sharp and demanding. He's been harassing me for over a week, showing up at my house at all hours, asking me the same questions over and over. It's completely unprofessional. The sergeant transferred her to Lieutenant Patricia Morrison, who listened patiently as Emily ranted for 15 minutes about how the police were wasting taxpayer money investigating her instead of finding Sarah. "Ma'am, Detective Reynolds is just doing his job," Morrison explained. "When someone goes missing, we have to interview everyone who saw them last." "Well, he can interview me once, not 5 times. I have rights, you know. I'm being targeted because I'm a white woman and you want to make an example out of me." Lieutenant Morrison kept her voice professional. "That's not what's happening here, Miss Carter. If you feel uncomfortable answering questions, you're welcome to have a lawyer present. Maybe I will, and maybe I'll sue the whole department for harassment." Emily hung up before Morrison could respond. But filing a complaint wasn't enough for Emily. 2 days later, she called again, this time demanding to speak to the chief of police. When she was told the chief wasn't available, she raised her voice so loud that officers 3 desks away could hear her through the phone. "This is unacceptable. I'm a taxpayer. I vote, and I'm being treated like a criminal just because some girl I barely knew decided to run away or whatever she did." The chief's assistant promised someone would call her back. No one did. The detectives were too busy following actual leads. That's when Emily turned to social media. On October 30th, she posted a long rant on Facebook, typing in all capital letters with multiple exclamation points. "Police harassment is real," the post began. "I've been questioned 5 times about a missing person I barely knew. Just because I was the last to see her doesn't make me guilty of anything. The police in this town have nothing better to do than bother innocent people. Where are my tax dollars going? Not to actual police work, that's for sure." The post got 43 likes, mostly from people who didn't know the full story. Several of Emily's friends commented things like, "That's terrible," and "Sue them." Emily responded to every comment, building her narrative of being an innocent victim of overzealous cops. She posted again 2 days later, this time including a blurry photo she'd taken of Detective Reynolds' car parked across from her house. Day 8 of being stalked by the police. "They sit outside my house watching me. This is America. I have constitutional rights. I'm contacting a lawyer and the news." What Emily didn't know was that Detective Reynolds had a warrant to monitor her movements. And what she definitely didn't know was that every social media post, every angry phone call, and every public outburst was being documented and added to the case file. "Look at this," Officer Miller said, showing Reynolds Emily's latest Facebook post on his phone. "She's losing it." Reynolds smiled slightly. "Good. Guilty people can't help themselves. They have to control the narrative, play the victim. Innocent people? They cooperate and trust the process." "You think she'll actually call the news?" "Probably. But by the time any reporter shows up, we'll have enough evidence to arrest her." Emily called the local news station on November 2nd. She spoke to a reporter named Jennifer Walsh for 20 minutes, crying about how the police were ruining her life over a missing person she had nothing to do with. "They're trying to railroad me." Emily sobbed into the phone. "I'm innocent. I want people to know what they're doing to me." Jennifer Walsh took notes but didn't commit to running the story. Something about Emily's version of events didn't add up. When Walsh called the police department for comment, Lieutenant Morrison simply said, "This is an active investigation. We can't discuss details at this time." The story never aired. Meanwhile, Detective Reynolds was at his desk, going through Emily's phone records, her GPS data, her purchases, and her constantly changing statements. Every piece fit together like a puzzle. Emily could post on social media all she wanted. She could file complaints and threaten lawsuits. But none of that would matter when Reynolds walked into court with evidence that didn't lie. On November 3rd, Detective Reynolds finally got what he'd been waiting for: a search warrant for Emily Carter's townhouse and vehicle. Judge Patricia Hendricks had reviewed all the evidence: the changing stories, the suspicious purchases, the GPS data showing late-night trips to remote locations. She signed the warrant without hesitation. Emily was at work when the forensic team arrived. Reynolds wanted it that way. He didn't need her screaming and threatening lawsuits while his team collected evidence. When Emily's supervisor called to tell her police were at her house, Emily left work immediately, driving 90 miles per hour down the highway. She pulled up to find 3 police cars, a forensic van, and crime scene tape blocking her driveway. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, jumping out of her car. "You can't just break into my house." Reynolds held up the warrant. "We can, and we are. This gives us legal permission to search your home and your vehicle." "This is insane. I haven't done anything wrong." "Then you have nothing to worry about," Reynolds said calmly. "Please step back and let us do our work." Emily stood on the sidewalk for 3 hours, alternating between crying and yelling at anyone who would listen. Neighbors came out to watch. Some recorded video on their phones. Emily didn't seem to notice or care that she was making a scene. Inside the townhouse, forensic technician Sarah Chen was finding exactly what Reynolds hoped she would. The house looked clean, too clean. Every surface had been scrubbed recently. The chemical smell of bleach mixed with air freshener was overwhelming. Chen started in the living room, using a special UV light that could detect blood even after it had been cleaned. When she turned off the regular lights and switched on the UV, the room told a different story. "Detective, you need to see this," she called out. Reynolds walked in, and his stomach dropped. Under the UV light, the carpet near the sofa glowed bright blue, the telltale sign of blood that had been cleaned with bleach. There were spots on the wall too, small droplets that formed a pattern Chen recognized immediately. "That's cast off," she explained, pointing to the wall. "When someone swings something, like a weapon, the blood flies off in that pattern. Someone tried to clean this, but bleach doesn't completely destroy blood. It just makes it harder to see with regular eyes." They found more in the hallway. More on the bathroom tiles. The bathtub drain tested positive for blood, and so did the grout between the floor tiles that Emily had apparently tried to scrub clean. Outside, another technician was examining Emily's Honda CR-V. The trunk carpet had been removed recently. You could see where it had been pulled up and hastily put back. When they lifted it completely, they found blood soaked into the underlying material. Emily had cleaned the surface, but hadn't thought to check underneath. But the most damning evidence came from Emily's laptop, which Detective Aaron Cole found hidden in her bedroom closet under a stack of sweaters. When the digital forensics team examined it, they found that Emily had deleted her browser history on October 19th, the morning after Sarah disappeared. Deleted files could be recovered, though, and what they found made Reynolds' blood run cold. On October 18th at 9:47 p.m., less than 2 hours after Sarah left Emily's house according to the neighbor, Emily had searched Google for how to clean blood out of carpet. At 10:23 p.m., how much bleach to use on bloodstains? At 11:15 p.m., how long until missing person presumed dead? At 11:34 p.m., can police find body in woods? The searches continued over the next few days. Do security cameras record at night? How long does DNA last? Can bleach destroy all evidence? Lawyer for murder case. Emily had also deleted text messages, but the phone company had records. In the weeks before Sarah disappeared, Emily had sent increasingly angry texts to Sarah about the money. "You'll regret pushing me," one message read. "I'm not someone you want as an enemy," said another. The final text, sent on October 18th at 6:47 p.m., was simple. "Come over tonight. We need to talk." Sarah had replied, "Okay, I'll be there at 7:30. She never sent another message after that. Reynolds stood in Emily's driveway as his team loaded evidence bags into their van. Emily was still screaming about her rights, about lawsuits, about harassment, but her voice sounded different now, less angry, more desperate. She knew they'd found something. "Emily Carter," Reynolds said, walking toward her with handcuffs in his hand. "You're under arrest for the murder of Sarah Martinez." Emily Carter's hands shook as Detective Reynolds clicked the handcuffs around her wrists. For the first time since this whole investigation began, she was completely silent. No screaming, no threats, no demanding to speak to supervisors. She just stared straight ahead, her face pale and blank, as Officer Miller read her Miranda rights. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The neighbors who had gathered on the street watched as Emily was led to the police car. Some looked shocked. Others nodded like they'd suspected all along. Marcus Chen, the neighbor who'd heard the argument that last night, stood on his porch with tears in his eyes. He'd known something terrible had happened. Now it was real. At the police station, Emily was processed and photographed. Her fingerprints were taken. She was given an orange jumpsuit to change into. Through it all, she stayed quiet, almost like she was in a trance. But Detective Reynolds knew that wouldn't last. Once she was in the interrogation room, once she realized how much trouble she was really in, the old Emily would come back. He was right. Reynolds and Sergeant Blake sat across from Emily in the small, windowless interrogation room. A camera in the corner recorded everything. Emily's lawyer, a tired-looking public defender named Robert Hayes, sat beside her taking notes. "Emily, we found blood in your house," Reynolds began, his voice calm and factual. "We found blood in your car. We found your internet searches about cleaning up blood and hiding bodies. We have GPS data showing you drove to remote locations in the middle of the night. We have surveillance footage of you buying cleaning supplies and trash bags hours after Sarah disappeared." Emily's lawyer leaned over and whispered something to her, probably telling her not to say anything. But Emily couldn't help herself. "That doesn't prove anything," she said, her voice cracking. "Maybe I cut myself. Maybe I had a nosebleed." "The blood in your trunk? On your walls? In the pattern that shows someone was hurt badly?" Blake shook his head. "That's not from a nosebleed, Emily." Reynolds slid a photo across the table. It showed the UV image of Emily's living room, glowing bright blue with cleaned blood. "This is what your house looks like under special light. You tried to clean it up, but you can't erase blood completely. The science doesn't lie." Emily stared at the photo, and for the first time, her tough exterior started to crack. Her eyes filled with tears. "We also have your text messages," Reynolds continued. "The ones you deleted. Sarah texted you back at 6:47 p.m. on October 18th saying she'd come over at 7:30. Your neighbor heard you two arguing at 7:45, and at 9:47, you were searching the internet for how to clean blood out of carpet." "I want my lawyer," Emily whispered. "You have your lawyer right here," Blake said, gesturing to Hayes. "But he can't help you, Emily. The evidence is overwhelming. What he can help you with is telling us where Sarah is. Her family deserves to bring her home. Her mother deserves to bury her daughter." That's when Emily finally broke. The tears that had been building spilled over, and her whole body started to shake. "It was an accident," she sobbed. "I didn't mean for it to happen. We were arguing about the money, and she wouldn't stop pushing me, and I pushed back." She fell and hit her head on the coffee table, and there was so much blood. Her lawyer put his hand on her arm, trying to get her to stop talking, but Emily couldn't stop now. The words poured out like water from a broken dam. "I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I cleaned everything up. I thought if I just cleaned it well enough, no one would know. I thought I could make it all go away." "Where is Sarah, Emily?" Reynolds asked gently. Emily covered her face with her hands. I can't tell you that. Her mother needs to know. Her sister needs to know. I can't." Emily's voice rose to a wail. "Don't you understand? If I tell you where she is, then it's real. Then I really did this. Then I'm a murderer." Reynolds leaned back in his chair. "Emily, you are a murderer. The evidence proves that. The only question now is whether you do the right thing and tell Sarah's family where to find her." Emily didn't answer. She just sat there crying, her whole body shaking with sobs that sounded like they were being torn from somewhere deep inside her. The interrogation ended 2 hours later, with Emily charged with second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and obstruction of justice. She was denied bail. The judge called her a flight risk and a danger to the community. Sarah Martinez's body has never been found. Search teams combed the woods where Emily's GPS data showed she'd traveled. They searched the area around the storage unit. They brought in cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar. But wherever Emily had hidden Sarah, she'd done it well. The case is still open. Detectives continue to follow leads, hoping that one day they'll bring Sarah home to her family. Emily Carter sits in county jail, awaiting trial. She maintains that Sarah's death was an accident, that she never meant to hurt anyone. But the evidence tells a different story. A story of anger, violence, and a woman who thought she could lie and intimidate her way out of consequences. Justice moves slowly, but it moves. And for Sarah Martinez, justice is finally coming.